Hello one and all, this is my recap and review of Soma Spider So What? Volume 15, and I think this volume could best be described as an epilogue of Volume 14 and a prologue of Volume 16. In fact, in the afterword, the author even says he felt so bad about creating a volume with so little action that he went above and beyond to make sure that Volume 16 came out only a month after this one, which was certainly nice of him, but it doesn't really help me over here because in the States, Volume 16 won't come out for another 4 months. So, interesting. But anyway, though, this volume opens up with White really struggling to sleep. Turns out these elven treehouses aren't really all they're cracked up to be. Or, maybe White just feels a bit guilty by the fact that she murdered and ate the previous residents of this, elven treehouse. But either way, she refuses to live in regret, as doing so would mean rejecting who she'd been up to that point. Love that line. I love that line from White. And she also refuses to regret her decision to use the entire Imperial army as essentially cannon fodder, even though most of them died a really pointless death, and there is now a literal mountain of corpses right outside of her new bedroom window. Holy mother of God, White. A mountain that Mira is a bit worried White will eat, so he offers to make her breakfast. And White is, a little bit offended here, even though she probably shouldn't be, given the fact that she, ate all the elves, or at the very least she fed the elves to her clones. But either way, White is hungry, so she agrees to go have some breakfast with Mira and Vampy. Huzzah! Though before they can eat, they are interrupted by Elder Ronan, who has this weird death glare contest with Mira, so intense that some people actually pass out around them. But White can tell that, Ronan is not all that serious, not actually trying to harm them, given the puppet spider Fiel is hanging off the old man's back and playing with him. Weird, so weird. It turns out that she took a liking to the old man after they fought together last volume, and Elder Ronan is just so excited to finally meet his master after so long, and he gives this big dramatic introduction. I am the legendary Elder Ronan! And it is completely and totally ruined by Fiel pulling on the old man's cheeks. A move so ridiculous that even White can't help but laugh at its absurdity. And then she heads off to have breakfast with Vampy, leaving a very crestfallen Ronan behind. Oh god, poor Ronans. Anyway though, during breakfast, White is forced to face the reality that she needs to go talk to her classmates. They aren't really her classmates, but calling them her classmates is much easier. And during that conversation, she's going to need to explain why she just committed mass genocide, which, would be an awkward conversation for most people, but as we all know, White isn't the best at communicating. Thankfully, Wrath is weirdly good at reading White's gestures and mild facial expressions and can usually tell what she's trying to convey very easily. I'm not sure why, but this is just further proof that Wrath is the best guy in this series. I mean, Mira's also pretty good. Wrath and Mira are certainly tied for best guys in the series. But things get pretty awkward when White, Vampy, and Wrath arrive. Obviously, people are pretty surprised that White is alive, given that Mizoka said that Hiro Wakaba is dead, and they're even more surprised to see that Sophia is hot now. Yeah, she did not look good back in Japan, which, was just genetics. Her parents were ugly too, but they had a really kind heart, which unfortunately Sophia did not inherit. I mean, Sophia is definitely improving, but most of the time, she is just so awful. Anyway though, then White is also surprised to find that Shinobu, the Pontiff's ninja, and Ogiwara, the Pontiff's spy with the unlimited telephone skill, are tied up face to face. Now they're tied up because they're both viewed as enemies who attacked the elf village, and they're face to face because the girls found it amusing, which is a bit weird, but it's also weirdly consensual given that Shinobu's ninja skill would let him teleport, would let him escape whenever he wanted to, but he waited for permission so he could re-earn his classmates' trust, which, interesting. Oh yeah, and there's also this weird lore drop in this volume that Dee actually debated quite a bit about whether to give Shinobu a ninja skill or a grass-growing skill, given that his last name has the kanji for grass in it. Weird. So weird. But anyway though, then it's time to start explaining things, and unfortunately for White, all eyes are on her, so she can't rely on Wrath to translate, And at this point, and I think all the readers were expecting some like really long, awkward pauses, followed by like 1 or 2 word answers. But White very eloquently explains that everyone there is now a prisoner of the demon army. Which, interesting, though this isn't technically White speaking. I mean, the explanation she gives is pretty weird, but basically she has enough memories of Dee playing Hiro Wakaba that she's basically able to take on the Hiro Wakaba persona. She is a method actor, essentially. Oh, I love it. But because she has some really mixed feelings about her relationship with Dee, she doesn't really like doing this too often. Very interesting. Anyway, though, then just things are getting started, Shun appears. And he's not looking too great, because thanks to White's efforts, he ended up maxing out his taboo skill, and now knows all the secrets of the world. And what's more, he also saw the memories of the goddess Ariel, and those who were closest to her in her final days, though this seemed to be separate from taboo, and was likely a result of the goddess Ariel herself tinkering with him, because, Shun is beloved by the gods, for some freaking reason. But then Shun opens up the taboo menu, and unfortunately, opening it makes one violently ill. I mean, just having taboo skill maxed out makes you ill already, but actually opening up the menu makes it so much worse. Which sucks for him, but is really good for us, because this is, as far as I can tell, the first time we've ever actually seen what's inside taboo. And we see like a list of headers, system overview, system header descriptions, update history, points list, reincarnation history, and special options. And the reincarnation history tab is one of my favorite parts of this entire thing. I mean, it's blank for Shun because, he's not part of this world. But for the natives, it shows them all the lives they lived up to this point, including who they were when the system was first implemented and what role they had in killing the planet and betraying the goddess. Fascinating. But like I said, this is blank for Shun, so he takes a deep breath and heads downstairs to see White, the woman who killed his brother. Dun dun dun! And honestly, I am just so overwhelmingly happy that Shun learned the truth about this world before facing White. I mean, he's still just a little bit insufferable, but at least he's no longer ignorant. He knows the truth and can now decide what he believes is right, rather than just stabbing in the dark at whatever he's told is the big bad. And White also fills in the rest of the classmates on the state of the world, and it is just so much worse than I expected. She pulls out this, giant holographic globe, and it shows that half the planet has completely fallen apart because of Potimus' overuse of MA energy. The planet is dying, though thankfully not within their lifetimes. Though they're all, really worried, okay, what about within our children's lifetimes? Which leads White to ask, hey, are you pregnant? Thankfully no, but she's just wondering. Though of course White is planning on saving the planet, but she decides not to tell him that part because it's just way too complicated. She also avoids telling him that Potimus was planning on eating their souls, since she figured it would be just way too dark. Though just the stuff she did tell them is enough to just fully and completely break Miss Oka. She collapses on the floor and starts hyperventilating. And Shun tries to, rush in and fix her with healing magic, but there's nothing, physically wrong with her. Her mind just broke after realizing that she spent over a decade helping an absolute and complete monster. Thankfully, though, White's around, and she's able to invert her fear-inducing evil eye to actually calm Miss Oka down, while holding her in her arms and just telling her, it's alright, over and over and over again. And this is quite frankly one of the most human scenes we have ever gotten from White. Though somebody in the comments under a previous video did tell me that White did something rather similar to Miss Oka after she first stripped Hugo of his skills. But anyway though, this display is enough to convince most of the classmates to forgive Miss Oka. I mean, the class rep still has some major anger issues, but it is mostly pushed aside when she's told that Miss Oka's skill has a penalty that she can't talk about. And Miss Class Rep is reminded that her parents fully willingly sold her, so she probably wouldn't have had the greatest life even if the elves hadn't bought her. She probably just would have been sold to somebody else, and they may have treated her way worse than the elves did. But anyway though, then Shun steps up and gets mad at White's party for killing the elves, because even though he acknowledges they were insane racist monsters who tried to destroy the world, he feels they should have been given a chance to repent. which I mean does make a bit of sense. A lot of the elves were actually in the dark about MA energy, and they actually thought they were trying to save the world. Plus, this is something we actually saw from Julius as well. He wanted to find a way to save the bandits and traffickers he caught when leading the task force, but he very quickly gave up on that plan because he knew he just didn't have the time. Time spent trying to reform a criminal was time that could have been spent trying to save an innocent person. And overall, Shun just realizes that lives in this world aren't valued all that highly. People kill and die every day, and White's party has adapted to this worldview, but Shun just can't. And this creates a strong rift between him and Wrath, and they just aren't able to overcome it. And then after the screaming match between Wrath and Shun about the value of a life comes to an end, they all agree, you know what, let's take 5 minutes, let's take a break. And White gets pretty irked when she sees Sophia, a vampire, sunbathing with her wolf familiar, so she kicks her, and then she puts her in charge of the explanation, even though Sophia doesn't think they owe the classmates anything, but she still takes charge of the meeting. And while her methods were certainly brash, she made progress with very few interruptions. And now she opened up with, first off, just so we're all clear, we saved all you people, which means it's officially up to us whether you live or die. And when Shun protested this, she knocked him to the ground. And when Katya protested her knocking Shun to the ground, Sophia slapped her. And when Shun tried to protest her slapping Katya, he got kicked in the face. And after that, everybody pretty much just stayed quiet and listened to what she had to say, which, you know, was probably for the best. Oh yeah, Sophia also ripped off the Band-Aid real fast, revealing that they didn't just beat the elves, they exterminated them. They committed genocide against them. Before arguing, if you had a problem with it, you should have stopped us. Don't blame us for your own weakness, okay? Oh, I love that. And that's, you know, a pretty good argument since Shun did try to stop her and failed miserably. She then promises, you know, out of the goodness of her heart, to help all of them start a new life elsewhere. And if they really hate this world that much, White could just send them all back to Japan. A claim that makes everyone in the room very happy, except for White, since she can't actually do that. Turns out the whole N%I=W skill that all the reincarnations have actually binds a person's soul to the system, so White can't actually send them back. Which made things very awkward in the room, though it made me very happy since I've been wondering for a long time why White didn't just send Miss Oka back to Japan to keep Potimus from taking over her body. Turns out that was never an option because Miss Oka and the rest of them are bound to the world until their death. Now, White did offer to send Vampy and Wrath back, an offer they refused since they're happy here, but it wasn't something White could do easily. It's only possible to do in the moments that the system is destroyed, meaning White could only bring 2, maybe 3 people back to Japan. And since White didn't want everyone arguing over who could go back, who could get those 2 slots, she just outright lies and says, nope, it's impossible, can't do it, it can't be done. A claim that bummed out everyone, so White, Wrath, and Vampy decided to leave for the day, though they did leave behind some 10th Army soldiers to keep an eye on the classmates. And while a lot of the classmates really want to go back to Japan to see their families or read their comics, they quickly realize there's no home for them to go back to. Years and years have passed, and they look nothing like their past selves, so their own families wouldn't even recognize them. And this further bums everyone out. But thankfully an old friend has dropped by to cheer them up. Good old Hugo! And he has basically given up. He's fully willing to make amends for his actions in whatever way his classmates choose, even if they order him to die. In fact, they ultimately decide to make him their slave for the rest of his life, and he is completely cool with that. He knows he's done wrong, and he's sorry, but he was basically in denial. Yeah, the entire reason why Hugo was evil for the past 15 volumes was because he refused to believe that this world was real, so he just kept trying to push forward until he woke up. And I'll admit, I don't think this is the best bit of writing in this series. It feels a bit unbelievable, but I love it because it hints at Hugo's intended story, a story that was ruined all because of Potimus. Now, Hugo's denial is a result of 2 things, his terrible childhood and the loss of his best friend. Now, even though Hugo was the only prince of an incredibly powerful country, his childhood was not pleasant at all. The empire was insanely corrupt, and everyone was trying to use and exploit Hugo for their own gain. There was nobody he could actually trust. But there was supposed to be. Sir Chiva, the mentor to Julius, was tasked with raising Hugo by the Sword King, but he rejected that duty to chase after the kidnapping organization that killed his son and grandson, an organization that was run by Potimas. And if Sophia hadn't been killed by Potimas, he would have raised Hugo into a fine, upstanding young man. This is something I speculated on back in my Volume 11 video, but this seems to confirm it, and even hints at a greater story than I originally thought, because we can say with a very high degree of certainty that Sophia's grandson was killed by the elves, meaning he was one of the classmates, and only 3 of them are dead. I believe one died before Miss Oka first contacted Potimas, so that means there's a 50-50 chance that Sophia's grandson was actually Hugo's best friend. And I think that's what Dee intended. She didn't just drop people in this world randomly. She wanted to be entertained. She wanted to see a story play out. And I think this was supposed to be Hugo's story. Hugo and his best friend would have basically been raised as brothers under the tutelage of Sophia. They would have grown strong and noble, and when they eventually went to the academy, they would have been competitive with Shun, but not hostile. Oh, and speaking of Shun, I could probably throw Wrath into the mix as well. Now, obviously, without White and Potimas, Bureau's summoner wouldn't have tortured Wrath into the rage-filled monster he became, but he was still a very special goblin near the Empire's territory. I could absolutely see a timeline where he did end up captured, tamed, and given to Hugo, the crown prince of the Empire. And that might seem like a stretch, and it absolutely is, but that created a great parallel between Shun's party and Hugo's party. Both would have a monster familiar that was once friends with the other side. So amazing, so freaking amazing. And I definitely think this was intended by the author. I think he wanted us to draw these connections. Funny though, back to the story, even though Hugo is remorseful, he's still antagonizing Shun and calling him weak, and Shun really freaking wants to hit this dude, but decides ultimately that, doing so would just prove White. Thankfully, Faye doesn't care about that, and she strikes him with the full force of a freaking dragon. Love it. And so does Yuri, Hugo's saint, who it turns out was brainwashed. I honestly wasn't sure about this because, back in Volume 5, when she was so gleefully murdering the elves, I wasn't really sure if she was, just religious crazy or if Hugo had brainwashed her. Turns out it's both. She is a serious sadist and regrets that Hugo can't be punished more brutally, but she accepts him getting turned into a slave. Oh yeah, and this whole conversation and all the punching really freaks out the rest of the classmates, who aren't, used to violence at all. And this makes Shun realize that, this world has changed him as well, and he probably owes Wrath an apology. Though that thought is interrupted when Shun remembers, wait a minute, I had a sister! Wonder where she's at. And this is where Hugo gets very quiet because he knows that Shun won't like the answer he's about to give. And even explaining it will prove difficult, and Hugo tries to explain they didn't actually brainwash Sue, but Shun counters that he knows is a lie because he saw her status and knows she was brainwashed, which forces Hugo to explain they only brainwashed her for like 5 minutes, and she's actually been working under White for years of her own free will. Mostly. White did threaten Shun a bit to force her to comply, but still, it's mostly of her own free will. And Faye also realizes in this moment that Hugo was also being brainwashed by White. And I was honestly really worried here this would turn to them all just blaming White for everything Hugo did, but he's very upfront about what he did of his own free will, and doesn't try to pin any of the blame on White. I really like that. Oh, and then Shun explains the truth about the world, the truth about taboo, and Yuri is deeply hurt the church would lie about something like this, but her crisis of faith doesn't last very long, as just a few minutes later, she starts cutting herself with her fingernails over and over again to forcibly raise her pain mitigation skill in order to hear the divine voice before falling to her knees in prayer. Yeah, like I said, this girl is seriously, seriously crazy. Oh, and then Hugo goes to complain to Faye that he was always jealous of the easy life Shun had, despite them both being princes. And Faye responds by hitting him again, and saying, we'll just have to beat that twisted personality right back into shape, and I'll keep beating you up even after it gets better for the rest of your life, which is so terrifying. And for some reason, Hugo interprets this as a marriage proposal, which, maybe they were close back in Japan, and Faye has been acting a lot more human since she unlocked a human form, so yeah, maybe these two crazy kids could end up together. I'm honestly not sure. Or then we have Tagawa and Asuka, the adventuring duo, who decide to go talk to Mira, learn the truth about why the tribe was wiped out, and sort out their own feelings. But after walking around for a while, they realize, hey, we have absolutely no idea where he is. Thankfully, the 10th Army soldier sent to follow them eventually gets annoyed and basically goes, oh, for the love of, he's over there! Love that. I so freaking love that. And, Mira is happy to explain, though he does warn them that it is not a pleasant story, but they still want to know the truth. They want to know why all this happened. So he begins, though not before bringing them out 2 mugs of tea. He is very considerate, and his kindness kind of irks Tagawa because it makes him so hard to hate. Anyway, though, the Mira begins his story by explaining how the inner conflict in the Demon Country led to Miss Oka being stuck behind enemy lines and needing to cross the border, an act made exceptionally difficult by the despicable thieves who killed on sight. And this description of his tribe very much surprises Tagawa, but not Asuka. She was well aware of who they were even from a young age, which is why she was so desperate to escape them and their lifestyle. And then the duo wonder, okay, so wait, is Miss Oka to blame for all of our troubles? But then Mira goes on to explain further that killing the tribe was also done to save them from getting caught up in the war. And this just, kinda breaks them. Do they have any right to be mad at Mira for saving their lives? They aren't really sure. And Mira leaves so they can think things over, but before he goes, he tells them that he can't apologize or offer his life to compensate them, but he's willing to duel them whenever they want. And once more, Taga was irked by just how kind his mortal enemy is. Oh, I love Mira. I freaking love Mira. Meanwhile, White leaves her classmates behind and immediately gives Sophia a roundhouse kick for blabbing about going back to Japan, before wrapping her up in thread and dragging her along the ground for the next several chapters. And this is honestly really interesting because Sophia could have actually escaped whenever she wanted. I mean, she is a freaking vampire. She can just turn into, red mist. But she didn't because she knew it would just further take off White and lead to a worse punishment down the road. And I do think that's a rather impressive sign of growth. She's accepting her punishment rather than trying to escape it, even when she doesn't believe it to be fair. She also seemed to show a bit of concern for Yuri earlier this volume, so she's got a bit of empathy as well. Huzzah! And Wrath does try to argue that it's actually White's fault because she didn't explain things properly, but this annoys her, so she ignores him and just ends up dragging Vampy to the giant UFO that Ariel is currently exploring. And Ariel ends up agreeing with Wrath it's actually White's fault, but argues that, White is just too used to being a loner because she's so insanely powerful and she needs to learn to rely on her friends. And that kinda breaks White. Learning that Vampy and Wrath are her friends just, fully breaks her mind because she doesn't actually understand what friendship is, at all. I mean, she was a spider just a few years ago, but she's trying. She's really trying. And then she, goes down to give Vampy head pats, but then she gets annoyed and ends up kicking her instead. Small steps. Very, very small steps. And Ariel tells Wrath that he needs to start scolding White when she misbehaves. A concept that Wrath finds utterly terrifying, given the fact that White is in fact an actual freaking god. But Ariel pretty much ignores him and instead starts reading Potimus' journal, most notably the entry from the day the previous hero and Demon Lord tried to kill Dee. But despite what Ariel and White first assumed, Potimus seemed utterly and completely baffled by these events. He had no idea what was happening or why. All he knew was that there was a serious drop in the planet's MA energy reserves, and as White thinks about it, she realizes at no point did Potimus ever mention Dee. In fact, he might not have even known she existed. Which I find utterly freaking hilarious. Potimus saw himself as the smartest man in the world, and yet he was completely in the dark about who was really in charge of the system. But this means that somebody else caused the former hero and Demon Lord to attack Dee, and there is only one person in the entire world who knew about Dee and could have caused the attack on her to happen. Good old Black, who immediately teleports in and says, basically, this is all my fault. So Ariel starts punching him, though he is an actual freaking god, and she has lost most of her powers, so it's not really much of a fight at all. Though White does seem to find it amusing, as she starts narrating it like a sports commentator, until Wrath literally has to pull them apart. And throughout this entire thing, all Black kept saying over and over again was, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Which leads White to actually freaking say she won't understand if you don't explain things. Quit apologizing and tell the whole thing from the beginning. A rather ironic thing for our silent protagonist to say, and when Sophia points this out, White kicks her again. Oh god, poor Sophia. Anyway though, then Black explains they tried to enact a ceasefire between humans and demons because demons were about to go extinct. Unfortunately, the previous hero and demon lord had already been told by Potimas that the administrators were evil and they were responsible for this entire war. So the hero and demon lord decided to work together to kill Black. Thankfully, Black is a freaking god, so nothing within the system should have been able to hurt him. But unfortunately, D sucks. D really, really sucks. She set it up so the hero would be able to draw energy from the system when fighting the demon lord in order to ensure that he would never lose. But this special perk is also triggered when fighting a god, and the demon lord has the exact same perk. So for a few brief moments, both the hero and the demon lord were given the powers of a god, and unsurprisingly, this killed them. But before it did, they were able to launch an attack against Black, an attack that ate up a bunch of MA energy and nearly destroyed the planet itself. But White realizes this still doesn't add up. This still doesn't explain how the attack managed to reach Japan, how it managed to reach D. Black's hiding something. He's trying to protect someone, and there's only one other person in the entire world with the power to reach D, the goddess Ariel. Even in her current state, she managed to protect Black and try to strike down D to end the suffering of humanity. But Black still feels really guilty over playing such a key role in damaging the planet and wiping out the entire classroom. White's not mad about it, though. Back in Japan, she was an ordinary little spider, and now she's a freaking god! She can't be mad about that, and they all agree to work even harder together to save the world. But once again, Dee just proves herself to be the most evil god, as she sends out a divine proclamation to all humanoids in the world. World Conquest activated. An evil god is plotting to sacrifice humanity in order to end the destruction of the world. You must either prevent this plot or assist with it. And I just abso-freaking-lutely love this quest. The initial proclamation lets the entire world know that something is going on. They now know the world's on the brink of destruction, and that they may be sacrificed to stop it, but also just makes everyone stop and sit down, take a break from whatever they're doing, and think about what this actually means, which is pretty important because the next step of world conquest involves installing taboo in all humanoids. And this is a rather unpleasant process that knocks a person out for around 12 hours. So that initial warning probably saved a lot of lives. And now everyone in the entire world knows the truth that Dustin has been trying to keep hidden for decades, centuries, millennia. They know what they did eons ago to the planet and the goddess, and they can make an informed decision about the fate of the world, which is useful since the next step of world conquest is voting. The Ivory God, aka White, wishes to destroy the system, save the goddess, and kill half of all humanoids. The Ebony God, aka Black, seeks to sacrifice himself and Ariel to save humanity and the planet. And this was definitely news to me. I don't think Black has ever mentioned that he could save the world by sacrificing himself and Ariel. I'm not sure if this is something Dee just offered to him right now or a long-term plan he's had for a while. Looking back, he did make a few comments about how he'd never be able to see Ariel again, so maybe he knew this was coming? I'm honestly not sure. But regardless, by offering a prayer to one of these two gods, mankind can send a small amount of power to the god of their choice. And I initially balked at this, okay, this is a battle between gods. How much humans really contribute? But then I thought about it for a second, and I realized this could be a huge deal. Almost everyone is going to vote for Black, and this world has a population of several million, given that around 1 million people died in the Great Human-Demon War. I'd say it's safe to say that the population is at least around 10 million. Now, if every prayer just gives 1 stat point, and the entire population voted for Black, that'd give him the equivalent of 10 million stat points, which would be utterly and completely insane. I mean, even if only 10% of the population voted, and each prayer only gave a tenth of a stat point, that'd still be, like 100,000 stat points. And while gods don't really have stats, I think it's safe to say that white is around 100,000, several 100,000. So yeah, that could be bad. That could be really, really bad. But it's also just so very anti-anime, if you get what I mean. I mean, the whole, the hopes and prayers of the people fueling the hero is a trope at this point. I've seen it a lot, but the most well-known example would probably be, Goku's Spirit Bomb. And yet here it's being used against our protagonist, and she'll need to crush not only a god, but the hopes and prayers of an entire planet. Oh, I freaking love it. And the people are certainly going to be incentivized to vote, not only to keep themselves from dying, but also because taboo gets uninstalled as soon as you vote. And this is suspicious to me. I mean, I get this happening to anyone who votes for white. They have atoned and are willing to sacrifice their life, their very soul, for the sake of the goddess who risked her life for them. But then there's the others, those who voted for black. They're making the same mistake they did eons ago. They're putting the burden of their sins on somebody else's shoulders. They haven't learned their lesson, and I have to wonder if this is all a test on Dee's part. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if after Black won and sacrificed himself, Dee announced that the entire planet didn't deserve to live and wiped them all out for just being the worst. Oh, that'd actually be pretty funny. But anyway, though, for now, thanks to Dee's announcement, Black knows the truth about White's plan, though I suspect he's been aware for a while and just chose to live in denial, but that's no longer an option, so Black declares himself to be an enemy of White, because she is trampling on Ariel's wishes. And he punches her through her chest, destroys her heart, and teleports her to another dimension. She is a god though, so this doesn't really do too much damage, but being in Black's dimension is incredibly dangerous, since he set up a god field that strengthens himself while weakening his enemies. Thankfully, White is able to have her spiders eat away at his field and establish one of her own, but this is a very, very slow process, and this battle could end up taking months, if not years. But White knew this, that's why she let Black land that first blow on her, so she could spend that time setting things up for Ariel's sake, and her first move was teleporting Shun to a deserted island in the middle of the ocean so he wouldn't get in Ariel's way. Though this is also her means of paying off a debt, because Sue is also on that island, and Sue wants to spend the rest of her life with her brother without anybody else getting in their way. And Shun very quickly finds himself drug-bound and stripped naked. So yeah, that's a thing. Meanwhile, Katya is more than a bit freaked out about Shun suddenly disappearing, so she decided to force Felmina to tell her where White had sent Shun. And this was a bad idea for just so many reasons. I mean, first off, Felmina didn't actually know where he was or why White had teleported him away. And secondly, Felmina is just so much stronger than Katya, and a fight would not have ended well for her. But thankfully, Yuri manages to calm things down by giving a lecture on proper interrogation techniques, which somehow manages to diffuse the situation. You truly cannot argue with crazy, and I love it. Anyway, though, then Katya and the rest go to Elder Ronan, since he's the only person nearby who can actually teleport, and he somehow manages to teleport to Shun by following the connection that's bound him to Faye as his familiar. White didn't actually account for this because it's never been done before and shouldn't actually be possible, but there's a reason why Ronan is humanity's greatest mage. And so they all teleport into Sue's beach bungalow, just as she's about to, yeah. And this leads to a lot of screaming and arguing amongst the girls, with my favorite being Yuri, who objects to procreation before marriage, and she then tries to marry the heavily drugged up Shun on the spot. So, yeah, like I said many times before, this girl's seriously crazy, and this whole thing is insanely chaotic, but thankfully this makes Hugo realize that Shun has had a hard life too. Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Anyway, though, then Dee installs Taboo in everybody, and they all black out except for Shun, who already has Taboo installed. Though, if I remember things correctly, I think Hugo's Taboo skill was already up to level 9 as a result of him using his Lust and Greed skill, and I think it would have been really interesting to have Hugo already have, Taboo maxed out and spend the next 12 hours, with Shun talking about their various experiences. That could have been, a book all on its own, and I would definitely have read it. Oh, that would been interesting. Anyway, though, 12 hours later, everyone wakes up, and Sue has to wonder why she's tied up. I mean, I think the answer is pretty obvious, but she is pretty crazy. And this thankfully gives Shun the chance to finally talk things out with her, telling her that he can't love her in the way she wants to be loved, but he'll always be her big brother. And this is an incredibly important conversation for the two of them that Shun probably should have had back when they were 10, but he figured, hey, she'd grow out of it. Turns out he was wrong, and so now all he can do is pat her head while she cries. Very sad, very, very sad. But anyway, though, then the entire world is told to vote for white or black, and Shun picks neither. He decides, like his brother before him, he will seek the impossible, even if it means dying a meaningless death. And I must admit, part of me kind of hopes his actions do end up being meaningless. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't hate Shun, but it'd just be really weird if he ends up saving the day instead of white. I mean, I'm not even really sure what this third choice he's looking for would actually be. I mean, my best guess would be convincing the entire world to use the skill elimination skill, since White's plan would only kill strong people with a lot of skills. Though I have absolutely no idea how he'd pull that off. But Shun is loved by the gods, so if anyone can make it work, it'd be him. Anyway, though, back in the UFO, Ariel says a quick prayer that Black will return safely. Which I find absolutely hilarious because she's not actually praying for Black to win. She knows he won't because she simply can't imagine White losing. But she's just hoping that White doesn't beat Black so badly that he dies. Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. And I honestly kind of wish Black heard that prayer. I think it might have actually made him cry. But anyway, though, then everyone except Ariel and Wrath black out due to Taboo being installed, and they're kinda stuck. They can't do much without White. They can't even leave the Elven Forest. At least that's what they think, until Ariel remembers, hey, wait a second, we're in a giant UFO that is fully fueled up. So she orders Wrath to gather everyone from the village on board so she can fly them to the final battlefield, the Great Elro Labyrinth. Though after he leaves, she thinks to herself, I've never even driven a car before. Am I going to be able to fly this thing? Well, I guess we're about to find out. Love her optimism. Absolutely love her optimism. Meanwhile, Dustin wakes up and gets immediately to work, and part of me really was hoping that he'd join White's side because, he's learned from his past mistakes and he wouldn't try to sacrifice the goddess a second time. But no, he goes above and beyond to gather votes for Black, saying, I care not what sophistry it takes. Use any means necessary. We must persuade the populace to offer their prayers to Lord Black Dragon, the Ebony God. Raise a mob if you must, whatever it takes. And he knows he's on a time limit because sooner or later, the people will realize the church has been lying to them for millennia. But for now, the people are scared and will do whatever he says. Though things get a bit more complicated when reports start coming in that a giant UFO keeps blowing up churches. And Dustin pretty quickly realizes this is Ariel trying to turn people against the church while she's on her way to the Great Elro Labyrinth. But he counters this by instructing the priest of the blown up churches to publicly pray to the Ivory God, a move that even his own people find completely and utterly insane, as his plan is basically to trick the people into thinking that praying to the Ivory God leads to divine punishment. It's an insane plan, and it'll almost certainly get the priest killed, but it's all he can do in the moment not to lose votes. Holy mother of God, this man is terrifying. Meanwhile, Ariel is flying to the Great Elro Labyrinth to guard it because if anyone with a ruler class skill reaches the bottom floor, they can stop White's plan in its tracks. She also makes a Castle in the Sky reference, which I found rather amusing. But then de-initiated World Conquest Sequence 3, Speeches! And Ariel responds to this announcement by yelping, only to realize that every humanoid in the entire world can hear her, which is, certainly embarrassing, but she bounces back pretty quickly and gives an incredibly moving speech. Though unfortunately it probably moves people to vote for Black, since she basically just insults people for the entire speech. She blames people for sacrificing the goddess, she blames Dustin for erasing history. She even says, I've gone past anger and gone straight to disappointment. It kills me to think that Lady Sariel sacrificed herself to save such idiots. Oh, that's brutal. And then she ends her speech by saying, humans, please die for the sake of the goddess. Oh, I love that. I freaking love that. though she also gives herself a rather interesting title during the speech. She calls herself the Second Demon Lord, which doesn't make sense since there have probably been dozens of Demon Lords throughout history, but in Ariel's minds, they were all fakes appointed by the system. There was only one true Demon Lord in her eyes, Fodway, the Demon Lord of the business world, and the first vampire, who apparently tried to wipe out humanity in order to save the goddess during the early days of the system before he was stopped by Justking and the first hero, which is a story I'd very much like to hear more about, but regardless, that was Ariel's turn, and now it's Justin's turn to speak, since he is undeniably the leader of humanity. And despite his eloquence and literal millennia of political experience, it takes him a few minutes to start talking because Ariel's speech left him stunned. She was honest, painfully, brutally honest, without a care for what the people thought. A concept that is completely foreign to this old man, and so he decides to do the same. He introduces himself not as the 42nd pontiff, whatever number he's at, but as the last president of Dastrudia and the first pontiff of the world of God religion. And he tells the world, all this time, I have shamelessly repaid our debt of gratitude towards Lady Ariel, the goddess, with only hateful deeds and words. But he still holds his convictions and ends his speech by proudly declaring, I will save humanity no matter what it takes, and so gods, please die for the sake of humanity. It is definitely not the best speech he could have given, and he knows it likely cost him some votes, but it is an honest speech, and he is content with that being his final role in this war. But then a new voice speaks to him, not the machine-like voice of Ariel, but the bone-chillingly cold voice of the one who truly created the system, the voice of D. Well then, do your best to entertain me. And we end with a cut back to Black and White. They heard the speeches, and White can't help but think that, in another time, she could have definitely been friends with Black and Dustin. She really does like them, but none of them can back down from what they believe in, and so White declares that even if Black carries the faith and strength of all mankind, I will tear it all down. And thus the final battle continues. Huzzah! And I really do love what they did here with White. She is simply too freaking powerful, and putting her anywhere in this world would have made her allies completely and utterly useless. But by splitting them up, we're able to have White go all out this insane battle between the gods, while her allies face off against, the forces of humanity, all the demons, and probably the dragons as well, while Shun and his party are off doing their own thing and trying to find some sort of third option. Like I said, I'd be a bit bothered if Shun's role in all this is too large, but hopefully he just stays out of White's way and stays out of the Great Elver Labyrinth. But please let me know what you think down below. Who will win? Who will lose? How will Ariel feel about being saved the cost of half humanity? And what do you think Hugo's original story was supposed to be? Was his best friend Sertiva's grandson? Was Wrath supposed to be his familiar? And what would his relationship with Shun have been if he'd had that happier childhood? Let me know what you think down below, and until next time, peace!